Chapter 22. Carol Master's secretary sent me to Carol's shooting location, a deserted warehouse in Hogan's Alley, a low-life section of town, where I saw enough denizens floating around to cast an urban remake of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I parked my car, kissed my hubcaps goodbye, and went inside the warehouse. One of the city's finest intercepted me and demanded to know my business. I flashed him my license and he let me by. Before I had gone another 20 feet, I passed at least 8 or 9 more cops. Even for Hogan's Alley, that much security seemed excessive. I wonder how Carol rated it. Then I saw her photographic subject, none other than Dick Tracy, every cop's idol. That explained it. The precinct desk sergeant probably had to hold a lottery to select which of his many volunteers got to come over here and guard their hero's privacy. In the episode being shot, Tracy was going up against Mushface, a guy with a pug resembling a bowl of barley said wheaten. Mushface had the drop on the ace detective, but, since justice always triumphs, by the time the sequence ended, Tracy had turned the tables and was carting Old Ugly off to the Hoosgow. A bunch of cops came up to Tracy afterward and asked him for his autograph. While he rode, Tracy delivered a short sermon on the importance of strict law enforcement in modern society. The cops roundly applauded. A few of them snapped his word balloons and told them they planned to frame them and hang them above the station house door. The way the cops treated him, you might have thought he really was a cop instead of an actor playing a cop. A guy like Tracy could probably get elected chief of police on the basis of his dashing reflection in the funhouse mirror. In the comic business, they call that the power of make-believe. In our nation's capital, they call it politics. I offered to give Carol Masters a hand loading her camera stuff into her car, but I got a response so cold, I was sorry I'd taken the wool lining out of my trench coat. "I can manage perfectly well by myself, Mr. Valiant." She dragged a box of equipment out the door and across the sidewalk toward her car. She got it as far as the trunk, but couldn't lift it inside. I grabbed it, muscled it in, and did the same with 2 more. "That wasn't necessary," she said. "I really could have done it without you." "It's great to be appreciated," I cracked. "Sometimes I wonder how I keep from getting a swelled head." She pulled out the kind of key ring you usually find connected to a jailer and opened the door to her car. She slid into the front seat, positioned the rearview mirror around so she could see herself in it, and perked up her hair with a comb. "What do you want from me now?" she said, with about as much friendliness as I used to get from my drill instructor. I leaned on her car. It needed a good wash job, and so did I. "I want some more information on Rocco, that's all. The cops are convinced that Rocco killed him. I think otherwise, and I'm out to prove it." She turned sideways in the front seat, giving me a great shot of the wonderful things that happen to a well-built female body when you twist it just right. "But why? Roger's dead. You no longer have a client. There's nobody to pay your bill." "So, what does money matter if I can discover the truth?" I could tell she believed that about as much as she believed in Santa Claus, but she was sharp enough to realize that until she answered my questions, I'd never leave her alone. "What is it you want to know?" I went around to the other side of the car and slid in beside her. "I talked to little Rocco DeGreasy over at the gallery. He says Rocco ordered him to cancel your one-woman show and take down your work. Any idea why?" She dumped her comb into a purse only slightly larger than Sparkplug's V-bag. "He did it to be ornery," she said, "to flaunt his control over me. Rocco couldn't stand to have people cross him, and I've been doing a lot of that lately." "How so?" "My work with Toons rights, my support of Roger Rabbit." She turned her palms toward her, bent her fingers forward, and examined her nails. They were far from beautiful, chipped and scratched, like the nails of a rock climber clawing toward the top. "Rocco couldn't stand uppity women. He retaliated by yanking my work." Dick Tracy came over to the car. I'd never seen him in person before, and I couldn't believe how tall he was. Usually, Toons turn actor to compensate for being shrimpy, but Tracy could look me straight in the eye with no trouble. And talk about square-jawed. I could have used his chin for a letter opener. Carol introduced us, and his grip almost broke my hand. He yacked with us for a while, and impressed me as a gutsy stand-up guy. I nearly asked him for his autograph myself. "I understand Rocco called you the night he died," I said after Tracy left. "What did he say?" "Nothing much, really." I started to light a cigarette, but doused it when I saw her unsullied ashtray. A non-smoker, but that didn't surprise me. I had her pegged as a woman with vices a lot more complex than tobacco. Rocco's only reason for calling was to torment me. He crowned on and on about how he had canceled my show. He told me he would make sure I never showed him any gallery again. It was a typically disgusting Rocco performance. I finally hung up on him. "How long did you talk to him?" "I don't know exactly. I didn't look at the clock. I would guess about 5 or 10 minutes. Anyone with you when the call came in?" "No, I was alone." "After you got off the phone, what did you do?" "I had a stiff drink and went to bed." "You didn't go out?" "In the middle of the night? Of course not." If she was lying, she had the technique down pat. She didn't so much as tremble an eyelid. "What's the deal between Little Rock and Jessica Rabbit?" She shook her head ruefully. "The poor guy loves her, but Jessica feels toward him the way she would toward a lottery ticket. If Little Rock inherits Rocco's estate, Jessica's number comes up, and she wins big. She'll marry him and live happily ever after on his money. If he doesn't inherit, she'll rip him into teeny pieces and toss him into her wastebasket." I pulled out my notebook and read Carol the issue number I had copied off the comic in Rocco's fireplace. "Any idea what comic that could be?" She was shaking her head even before I'd finished my question. "No, there's hundreds of tiny syndicates putting out comics. Each uses its own numbering system. It could be anything." "Do you know of anyone with the initials SS who may have had a grudge against Rocco?" "Can't say that I do. Rocco had a few tunes with those initials under contract, but they're all decent hard workers. If you're trying to pin his murder on one of them, I think you're way off base." I hauled out the photos of the stolen artworks. "Know anything about these?" She flipped through them quickly, without interest. "There's some strips I shot a while back. Rocco put them up for sale in his gallery. I heard somebody stole them." "Odd, wouldn't you say, that whoever did it stole only strips shot by you?" She shrugged. "A discriminating thief. What more can I say?" She handed the photos back. "Have you heard of anyone offering these works for sale, or for ransom?" "Afraid not. But then there's really no reason why I should. These works were never my property. Everything I shoot belongs to Rocco. It was part of our contractual agreement, and also one of the biggest points of connection between us. I said I should have a cut of each sale. He said no." "There was nothing you could do about it?" "Not a thing. He owned them, lock, stock, and barrel. Pretty much the way he owned everything in his syndicate. Pretty much the way he owned Roger Rabbit. Pretty much the way he owned me." Sounded like a plausible motive for murder if I ever heard one. I asked her enough questions to get back around to the front side of the mulberry bush, and said goodbye.
Is that a rabbit in your pocket, or you just happy to see me?